Tonight we're going to continue in the writings of Rabbenu HaRambam, Laws of War, something which we haven't done in quite a long time. So it has been 105 days, who's counting, since our last shiur together in Rambam, Laws of War. That's 3.5 months, because we took a break for Laws of Teshuvah. Okay, so I don't think you are not learning Torah at all, but we stopped the Rambam's Laws of War for the Laws of Teshuvah. That's what we did. We're going to be using the same book. Now we finally have Rambam books for Laws of War. Just as we're about to finish, we probably have 1 or 2 shiurim left in the writings of Rabbenu HaRambam's Laws of War. But we're going to do so from the new Rambams that we have here on the table. Tonight's shiur is dedicated for the refuah shlema of my uncle, Ofer ben Yehudit, b'toch Shaar Cholei Yisrael, have a refuah shlema. It's my father's sister's husband. I'm doing so great. If I announce page numbers, it's going to be in the 1-volume edition of the Rambam. I'm going to ask someone to help me, so maybe you'll have 2 books with you. Okay? We left off in the writings of the Rambam, and you can open this in Sefaria. I think there's a link inside of the Zoom invitation. We're in the Rambam's Laws of War, so the book of Shofetim. If you go to chapter 7 at the end, okay, we'll come back. Sefer Shofetim, Laws of War, chapter 7 at the end. 1239 in the 1-volume Rambam. We've mentioned already all of the different people who are exempt from going to war, or at war they are sent back. Mi ha'ish hayareh verach halevav, the one who is weak, the one who is scared. Both he who is scared from dying and also the one who is scared from fighting. The person is not cut out to be fighting, and they're too afraid of killing their enemy, or they believe too much in other values like peace or love or whatever else might hold them back from doing the job of war. They're supposed to come home from war. It's not for them to stay there and ruin the morale in war. And at this point in time, Rabbenu HaRambam is going to talk about one more category of person. Someone we've mentioned before. But listen to what Rabbenu HaRambam says. Halakha Tet Vav 15.
Page 1240 on the top right.
Mi ha'ish hayareh verach halevav. 988 for you. Who is the person who is afraid and soft-hearted? Kimashma'o, literally, that's what it means, says the Rambam. She'en belibo koach la'amod b'kishrei hamilchama. That he has no strength. Let's move that away from the lens. He has no strength to stand in kishrei hamilchama. Mu'em use this word to mean in the war effort or the warfare. But really, kishrei hamilchama means the tying together of war, because when the soldiers go to war, they stand together like they're tied together, and they go forward in the battlefield. And because of that, we use this expression, kishrei milchama. Rashi explains in Masechet Sotah that it's intentional so that the enemies don't separate between them. I don't know. I'm not a warrior, so I can't tell you if that's the reason why they go to war. Umachar sheikanes adam bekishrei hamilchama. All of that was before we go to war. But now, today, Rabbenu HaRambam is going to talk to us about a person who already went to war. Now they're in war. What are the halachot of a person who's at war? When I was teaching in Israel, I taught at a very special yeshiva, and the Rosh Yeshiva there had in his office his military uniform. He was, and in the pocket of his military uniform, he had this Rambam photocopy. Right here, this teaching. There's a little rectangle like that inside of his pocket. ומאחר שייכנס אדם בקשרי המלחמה. And once a person enters into battle, יישען על מקווה ישראל ומושיעו בעת צרה. He must lean on mikveh Israel. Now, there's two ways really to understand the term mikveh Israel. Mikveh Israel can mean the ritual bath of the Jewish people, and there is a context. Where do we mention? I tell you on Yom Kippurim. Where do we mention Hakadosh Baruch Hu in the context of a mikveh? Very good. Rabbi Akiva says, "Ma mikveh metaheret et temeim, kach Hakadosh Baruch Hu metaheret Israel." Just like the mikveh, the ritual bath purifies the impure person, so too Hakadosh Baruch Hu purifies Am Yisrael. Here, though, more likely, we're using the term mikveh Israel in its literal sense of the hope of Israel. The mikveh from Lashon tikva. Yeah, that's the root here. Mikveh Israel. So the hope of the Jewish people and their Savior. Umoshio be'et tzara, the one who saves us in times of distress. V'yeda, and the soldier must know she'al yichud Hashem hu oseh milchama, that he is fighting a war not just for the purpose of fighting a war or going to battle or killing the enemies or protecting the homeland. All of those things are important things. They're not wrong. But there's a loftier reason for why we go to war. After October 7th, I was scheduled to give a shiur in New York. And there were a lot of conversations. Should we cancel the shiur? Should we make the shiur? Should I go to New York? Should I go to New York? I ended up going to New York. It was almost a week or two after October 7th of 2023. And I switched the topic of the shiur to this conversation. Why do Jewish soldiers go to war? I can't tell you if the chief of staff of the Israeli military knows why Jewish soldiers go to war. I'm telling you why Jewish soldiers, according to Judaism, go to war. And there are very lofty ideals of going to war. It's not just self-defense. It's not just stopping our enemies. It's a great part of it. V'yeda, that a person should know, she'al yichud Hashem hu oseh milchama. We're going to war because of Yichud Hashem, the oneness of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. This is mentioned in two different places. If you look in Yisodei HaTorah, but maybe somebody will help me. Achana, do you see my first volume of the Rambam anywhere? No. The first. Sure. You see it? A brown one? Yeah, bring it for me, please. Thank you, Jacob. That makes more sense. What did I tell you? Okay, chapter 1. Halacha Aleph.
It's page 34.
So if you go to the fundamentals of the Torah, chapter 1. Yisod HaYisodot. Is there a way to just turn it off because of the recording? Ve'amud HaChokmot. It's the foundation of all foundations, the principle of all principles, the pillar of the wisdoms. By the way, that spells out Yud, Hey, Vav, and a Hey, right? HaRambam starts off his Mishneh Torah with HaKadosh Baruch Hu's name. Leda, to know, sheyesh hamatzui rishon. To know, what does it mean to know? What does it mean to know that there's a first cause, there's a creator of the universe? What does it mean to know? To really understand it, to really know, what does it mean? Not just, oh, I know there's a God. Do you know there's a God? If I start asking you, who is HaKadosh Baruch Hu? Where is HaKadosh Baruch Hu? How does HaKadosh Baruch Hu work? How does he think? I know the Prophet says that his ways are not our ways, and his thoughts are not our thoughts. But still, if we have an obligation to know him, there must be something we can know about him. If we don't know the answer to any of those questions, but we believe in God, Rav Kapach says we believe in Avodah Zarah. We believe in an idol, because we created a God in our mind, and we believe in that God. But that's not the way that it works. We're supposed to believe in the God who told us how he is, to know that there is a God. And he is the one who creates all that is. I did a better English than this. All the things that exist. וכל הנמצאים מן שמיים וארץ, ומה שביניהן לא נמצאו אלא מאמיתת הימצאו. That everything here that exists only exists because HaKadosh Baruch Hu is one and he's real. ואם יעלה על הדעת שהוא אינו מצוי, because if it would enter a person's mind that HaKadosh Baruch Hu does not exist, אין דבר אחר יכול להימצא. Nothing else in the world could exist either. ואם יעלה לדעת שאין כל הנמצאים לבדו מצויים, הוא לבדו יהיה מצוי. And if we think, if all the things in the world stop to exist, then HaKadosh Baruch Hu, hu levado yeh matzui. He will still exist. V'lo yivtal hu levitulan, and he will not cease to exist because they cease to exist. Shekol hanimtzaim tzarichin lo, because all creations, all things that exist need him. V'hu baruch hu eino tzarich lehen v'lo lechad mehen. And he does not need them. So what is Rabbenu HaRambam telling you? What's he saying? There is a God. He's one God. He created everything that you see here. If there is no creator, everything else stops to exist. But if all of the creation stop to exist, he still exists. Hence the reason why it's very complicated when people start saying things like, oh, you're a part of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. I'll explain it to you. My hand is a part of me. God forbid I don't have a hand. Am I missing something? Yes. Because my hand is a part of me. If you are part of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, then that means that without you, something is missing from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and that's an impossible thing to say. Okay, we don't say it like that. Rather, when we say part of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, likely means something else entirely. And I urge those of people who study Kabbalah and the likes to actually understand what they're talking about when they study such things, and then maybe to understand why there were those that opposed such kind of terminology when speaking about the creator of the universe. We need HaKadosh Baruch Hu. HaKadosh Baruch Hu does not need us. It's not the point of today's shiur, but it's an important note if one day we want to stick to it and talk about it. And look in Halakha Hey. I was going to show you here. Yeah. I meant design. I thought you were right. Design. Elohazeh, this God, Echadhu, he is one. Eno lo shenayim, he's not two. V'lo yoter al shenayim, he's not more than two. Ela echad, shen kichudo, echad min achadim animtzim ba'olam. He is the type of one that there is no one like it on earth. The oneness of HaKadosh Baruch Hu is unique. The Jewish people live on this earth to teach the world about the oneness of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And that's why Rabbenu HaRambam tells us when the soldier goes to war, he's going to war to fight for Yichud Hashem. So let's go back to the laws of war. V'yasim nafsho b'chapo. It literally means he should put his soul in his hands. What does that mean? When you say he should take a risk, very good. He should take a risk. He should risk his life. We're back in the laws of war. V'lo yiran, he should not fear. V'lo yifchad, and have not be scared. V'lo yachashov, v'lo b'ishto, and he cannot think about his wife. He should not think about his wife. V'lo b'vanav, and not his children. Ela yimche zicham libo. Rabbenu is going to write some pretty harsh words here. He should erase their memory from his heart entirely. And he should stop thinking about anything else in the world. Not his business, not his car, not his house, not the weather, not the dirt, nothing. Just about the war. One focus, a one-track mind. Now he's at war, he operates like a soldier. Why should he not think about his life or his children? It's a distraction. It's a distraction. When you're sitting in the Beit HaKnesset, well, I shouldn't think about my wife or my children. Think about your wife or child all day long. Now you're talking to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. You're focused on something. Sometimes you go to a meeting with somebody, all they talk to you about their wife and their children. I didn't come to talk to you about your wife. I came to talk to you about you. I came to talk to you about business. I came to talk to you to focus. It's not a bad thing in the world to focus. But especially when a person's life is at risk and the whole nation, Am Yisrael as a whole, is at risk. So that's the kind of time that we focus. And anyone who begins to think about other things during the war, and he scares himself. He's distracting himself. Now he's afraid. Oh, what if I don't make it home? What if I never come back? What if we lose the war? What if, Is it? Of course it's scary. It's a terrifying thing. It's not an easy thing we're saying that a person should do. But anyone who does, over belo ta'aseh, violates a biblical prohibition. Shneimar, like it says in the Torah, al yirach levavchem, do not let your hearts be soft. Al tiru val tachpezu val ta'arzu mipenehem. You can't have any fear, you can't have any of this emotion in front of your enemies. Right now, the only thing you do is go to war. And a person who has any of these feelings, which are very normal feelings, nobody's taking away from them that they're normal feelings to have, but they're not appropriate to have during war. Not only they're not appropriate, but they also are forbidden. They're a biblical prohibition. V'la'od. And not only that. Ela shekol damei Yisrael tiluim b'tzavaro. All of the damei Yisrael, the blood of the Jewish people, I mean the lives of the Jewish people, are hanging on his neck. They're his responsibility. V'im lo nitzach. And if he does not win, does a soldier know he's going to win when he goes to war? So, he's going to be guilty that he's not winning? What is it? Okay, over that's a nice interpretation. Over, I'm not disagreeing with it. I think the pshat is, he didn't go to war planning to win. It's in his mentality. My plan is to win. I'm not leaving. If I die, I die. If we lose, we lose. But that's not the plan. The plan can't be we go to war to lose. I think we should make a few photocopies of the Rambam. What do you think? It can't be that a person will go to war with the intention of not winning a war. That's obviously part of going to war. Yeah. Then if a person goes to war, but doesn't go to war with his whole heart and his whole soul and his whole everything is focused on winning this war, this person is considered in halakha as a person who has killed everybody. Like it says, that he should not ruin the morale of his brothers because of himself. And it's explicit in the Kabbalah. Which Kabbalah? The writings of the Nevi'im. Rambam says Kabbalah, he means the Nevi'im, because he's quoting now a Navi. Arur oseh melechet Adonai Remiyah, ve'arur moneach harbo midam. Yirmiyahu the prophet curses people who go into war with an incorrect approach, with a wrong mentality. And cursed is the person who holds back his sword from shedding blood. You can't go to war like that. I mean, you can, of course you can, but it's against halakha to go to war. And that battle is not being fought the way the Jewish people must fight a battle. when we started learning this Rambam, I wanted to learn something that was relevant to everything that we're doing in the world right now. And sometimes it's more painful than others when the Rambam's writings are too relevant. Yeah, sometimes they're relevant, but when they're too relevant, it hurts a little more. And I think that it's already a year later, more than a year later, and we're still, shows you how slow we read the Rambam, but it also shows how much this Rambam is needed to be studied. But let's not end on a negative. There's a positive side to this. And anybody who goes to war and fights with his whole heart without any fear. And the whole mission, the whole purpose is Kiddush Hashem, to sanctify God's name in the world. I told them in New York that when soldiers go to war on behalf of the Jewish people, they're not fighting only for the Jewish people. The whole world knows, whether consciously or subconsciously, that everything depends on Am Yisrael winning this war. That we go to war so that they don't have to. We always said Europe is next. Look at last week. Everyone knows America is next. America didn't send warships to the Middle East on October 8th, 9th, 10th because they were bored. Britain didn't send their warships there because they wanted everyone to look at to help us. Everybody knows that this problem that's in the world right now is a problem for all of civilization. And Am Yisrael happens to be doing it in the name of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Muftach lo shelo yimtza nezek v'lo tagi'o ra'a. It's promised to him that nothing bad will happen to him. No damage will happen to him. V'yivneh lo bayit nachon b'Yisrael. And he will merit to build a good house in the Jewish people. Proper house. Bayit nachon is one that lasts. V'yizkeh lo levanav ad olam. And he'll have a zechut, he'll have merit for him and his children until the end of time. V'yizkeh l'chei olam haba, and he'll merit to the next world. Shneimar, like it says, Ki aso yaseh Adonai ladoni bayit ne'eman. Who says these words? These are the words of Avigail to David HaMelech. She tells him, HaKadosh Baruch Hu will make for you a faithful home. Ki milchamot Adonai Adoni nilcham. Because my master is fighting the wars of God. V'ra'a lo timatzeh b'cha miyamecha. And nothing bad will come to you in your life. V'ayta nefesh Adoni tzerura b'tzror ha'chaim et Adonai Elohecha. It's a very interesting sentence, by the way. And if you want to see some commentaries there, you should go look. But let's translate it as, in English they say, may the soul of the deceased or the departed be bound up in the bonds of life with the Kadosh Baruch Hu. If you want to really see what this means, open up the laws of Teshuvah, chapter 8. Maybe you'll help us with page numbers. Eight, Halakha Gimel.
Page 86. On the bottom right.
I don't know how to teach this in public. Okay, start halacha 1. I don't know how much of this you're allowed to say out loud. We'll just, okay. הטובה הצפונה לצדיקים היא חיי העולם הבא. The goodness that is waiting for the tzaddikim is the life of the next world. Halacha Aleph. Yeah. But Baruch, I just changed that clock on Sukkot and it's dead again. I wonder if there's a problem with that clock. I switched it on Sukkot, so it's like a month ago. I'm just wondering. I just looked at the time and I know that's not the right time. והן החיים שאין עמה, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, I just looked at it now and I remember. שאין עמהן מוות, והטובה שאין עמה רעה. There's a life that has no death, and good that has no bad. הוא שכתוב בתורה, that's what it means in the Torah, למען ייטב לך וארכת ימים. It will be good for you and you will live a long life. מפני השמועה למדו, we learned from Moshe Rabbenu, person after person. למען ייטב לך לעולם שכולו טוב. It will be good for you in a world that is completely good. וארכת ימים, you will live a long life. לעולם שכולו ארוך. וזהו העולם הבא. So maybe I can explain a little bit. When a person dies, they don't go to Olam Haba. These are incorrect words people use. They maybe, if you want, maybe they go to what's called Gan Eden. Maybe. I'm not telling you that's for sure. The neshama waits somewhere. And then when a person comes back to life, there will be Yemot HaMashiach. There is a time where Yemot HaMashiach will end. Yemot HaMashiach will bring about something called Kehillat HaMetim, the resurrection of the dead. When the dead are resurrected, so there'll be a world that comes afterwards called Olam Haba, the world to come. It's called the world to come because it's not here now. If it was here now, it wouldn't be Olam Haba. I don't know what Olam Haba looks like. I've never been there. You've never been there. No one's ever been there. We don't even know much. I'm sure there are those who do know much, but I'm not one of them. We say that one will live a long life. They will receive all of this reward. We're talking about Olam Haba. What good is there a reward in this world if a person has a house, but everyone will die at 120 years? We're not referring to the life here. When a person is promised that they will respect their parents, they'll live a good life, a long life, doesn't necessarily mean here. Here is, everyone's going to die at a certain point, whether they respect their parents or not. And so we talk about Tzura b'tzror chaim. If you look now at the Rambam in Halacha Gimel, Chaim elu, this life, lefi she'eni mehem mavet, because it has with it no death. She'en hamavet ela mimeorot haguf, because only bodies can die. Ve'en sham guf, and in this world there will be no bodies. Nikreu tzeror hachaim. They're called the bonds of life. Shneimar v'haita nefesh adoni tzerura b'tzror chaim. The same verse from Abigail mentioned here. V'zehu hasachar she'en sachar lemala mimenu. And this is the reward that has no reward greater than it. V'atova she'en acharei hatova. And it is a goodness that has no goodness greater than it. V'hi shitavu la'kol ha'nevi'im. And this is what all the prophets yearn for. Because I'm sure when you read these words of the Rambam and the laws of war, and you say one who goes to war, and they fight, and they this, and they'll live forever. How many tzaddikim do we know we lost in the last year? How many good, righteous people went to war, and they didn't come back, and they'll never come back from that war. So the Rambam is lying to you. Abigail was lying to David. No, we're not talking about life. With that soldier that went to war and never came home, we believe the foundation of our faith, what all the prophets told us about, is that this person is going to receive something that you and I and no one else will ever receive. Very good. We write it on the matzevot today in the Jewish community. You see it, Taf, Nun, Sadi, Bet. Hey, we say they should live forever. Everyone else says rest in peace. We don't say rest in peace. They should live forever. What do you live forever? He's dead. You write that on somebody's grave. Of course we write that on someone's grave, because we're not talking about here. It's not in this world. There is no promise that a person will come back from war. The promise, though, is that if they went to war wholeheartedly, with a complete heart, in a righteous way, that they will merit all of the things that righteous people merit. Let's go back to the ending here. Essentially, this is the end of the laws of war as we're going to study it together. There's some chapters before this that we didn't study. Some chapters after it, I don't think are so relevant for us to study. Eshet Fatah and the like. That's not where I want to take this. But as I was sitting here preparing the shiur, and the Rambam comes and leaves us in this place of, I don't know what I'm supposed to do with this information. And I decided to possibly take this somewhere else. I want to take it to the Talmud, and the Talmud to take it to a place where maybe the Rambam wouldn't take it. But that's why it's my shiur in the writings of the Rambam. Maybe it's not the Rambam shiur in the writings of the Rambam. I attached a PDF to the Google Classroom from Harav Kuka, and for those of you who are here in person, I have a printout for you in person. It's one paper per person. Masechet Shabbat. And if you want to find it in Safari, I'll tell you how to find it in Safari. If you want to find this Talmud, you want to go to Talmud, click on Shabbat, and you want to go down to page 57. This section of the Talmud is part of a conversation the Rabbanit recently quoted in her Shiurim on David HaMelech. I said 57, I meant 56. Amar Rabbi Shmuel bar Nachmani. Rabbi Shmuel, the son of Nachmani, said, Amar Rabbi Yonatan, in the name of Rabbi Yonatan. Kol haomer David chata. It's not there, so I'll get to that part. Anybody who says that David HaMelech sinned, eno ela to'eh, is nothing other than mistaken. Shnemar, like it says in the book of Shemuel, Vayhi David echol darachav, maskil, v'Adonai imo. And David was successful in all of his ways, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu was with him. Efshar chet ba liyado shechina imo. Could it be that he sinned while the Shekhinah was with him? Okay, but there's a problem. Why? Because Natan HaNavi comes to him, Elchanan, what did Natan HaNavi tell him? Madua bazita adavar Adonai. Why did you disgrace the word of God, despise the word of God? Interestingly, Amar Rav. Rav says, Rabbi Yehuda Anasi, De'ati mi David, who was a descendant of David HaMelech, Mehapech v'daresh b'zchutei David. He used to try to teach this verse in the merit of David HaMelech. No, I'm not going to go down this road. But I'm not going to go down this road here. Rabbani did mention in her shiur that this entire section is only in the context of arguing with early Christians with the minim. Elsewhere, you find many sources where Chachamim believe that David HaMelech sinned. In this particular conversation among the minim, and you'll notice on the whole page here in Masechet Shabbat, there's all kinds of people that didn't sin, that we know according to the Torah and the Mikra sinned. But I want to get stuck on a detail here. And that's at the top of your page 56, you see, in the PDF? Damar Rabbi Shmuel bar Nachmani amar Rabbi Yonatan. Rabbi Shmuel bar Nachmani says the name of Rabbi Yonatan. Kol hayotze lemilchemet beDavid. Anybody who went to war waged by the house of David HaMelech. Kotev get keritut leishto. Writes a get for his wife. Every soldier in the army of David HaMelech, when he went to war, would write a get and leave the get, a divorce document. In Hebrew, we call a get sefer keritut. Why? Because the Torah calls it a document of keritut, of cutting off. It cuts off between the two of them. By the way, today people don't really get divorced. I don't know anybody who's really divorced. Almost nobody. Because they're divorced, but they have all kinds of arrangements with each other, all kinds of things they have to do with each other, all kinds of payments they pay to each other, all kinds of visitations they visit with each other. It's not really a divorce then. The person is just married, but they have none of the benefits of a marriage, only all the suffering of a marriage. Sefer keritut, a get keritut, that's it, we're done. How do you know that the army of David HaMelech did that? Where do you see that in the story of David HaMelech and Bathsheba? Do you remember? Hanan, you know the story? David HaMelech and Bathsheba? War. Uriah Hitti. Tell me. Want to come here and tell the story? Okay, so say it.
She sent him a message saying she was pregnant, so he asked the general to pull back over his wife, and he was sitting there, and he said, "Don't go back to the home." He said, "How can I go home when my brothers are battling?" So he let it go back to battle. Then he told his general to put him in the front line, so he would die. And then he took Bathsheba.
As a wife. Very good. Do you see that verse on the top of your page? You sent Uriah Hitti to battle, and you took his wife as your wife. Look what the Talmud says. Lekuchin yesh lecha ba. You have taking of her. What does that mean, you have taking of her? Can I take someone else's wife as a wife? No. If a woman is married, David HaMelech will not be able to marry her. The fact that the Mikra recognizes that she was David HaMelech's wife, then that means that she was in some fashion divorced, in some way able to be his wife. And that's why Rabbi Shemuel Bar Nachman says the name of Rabbi Yonatan, that the soldiers of the house of David would go to war and write a sefer keritut, a get keritut for their wives. Now, where do you see that in the verse from Shemuel? It says here, ואת עשרת חריצי החלב האלה תביא לשר האלף, ואת אחיך תפקוד לשלום, ואת ערובתם תיקח. He says, carry these 10 cheeses to the captain of their 1,000, and to your brothers bring greetings and take their pledge, arubatam. But arubatam, our rabbis say, means something else. My arubatam. What does it mean, arubatam? Tanei Rav Yosef. Rav Yosef taught, devarim hame'oravim beno levena. Matters that are shared between a husband and a wife. Meaning, take this get to your brothers. Now, this is you definitely. What's the story here? David HaMelech learned this historically from Yishai, his father. It's going out very good. Yishai and the Chachamim have mentioned conversation that it's not Yishai who first instituted this, but you even find in the days of Moshe Rabbenu, we have rabbinic literature telling us that all the way back, Jewish soldiers sent their wives conditional gitin. If I don't come back from war, you're divorced before. Because from now you're divorced. Now, what does that help? It helps for two reasons. What does it help for a woman to be divorced before war? On condition. Someone is talking. Who's talking? Then that means, on Zoom, you can hear me well? It's coming from there, the voice? That means they're not connected here to the speaker. 1 second. I don't understand how they heard the whole shiur. Everyone on Zoom, can you hear me now? Is that better? Okay, if you heard me before, that's great, but you were listening to me from the phone. Now you're listening to me from the speaker in the Beit Midrash. So I don't know what that means practically, but here we have, Ima, I didn't hear what you said. So she'll not be aguna. Let's say he doesn't come back from war. They kidnap him. Whatever happens, we can't. So she'll be stuck forever, unable to get married. The get helps that. It also helps something else, maybe something you don't think about. It helps her that she's not chayevet yibum. Very good. She's not obligated in yibum. Yibum is what happens if a man dies and he has no children with his wife, and now she has to marry his brother, and maybe she doesn't want to marry his brother. So he exempts her from this whole cycle of suffering by sending her a get. That's the purpose of this get. Now it happened to be that for David HaMelech this get helped. Why? Because really at that point in time, Bathsheba was divorced. The get is now, whenever she receives it. And it's but why can't the person get divorced and get married every weekend? Could it happen? Could a person do that? Could a guy go to war on October 8th and divorce his wife? And if he comes home today, he'll remarry her. How long does it take to get married? 10 minutes and a bagel. You need some bread. What do you need? Rabbi, edim, what do you need? Minyan and the wedding. It's possible. Later we're going to find halachic conversations of gitim al tanai, all kinds of divorces that happen after 30 days, or whatever might happen if I don't come back after a certain amount of time. But technically, Chachamim are trying to use this as a document of divorce between the soldier and their wife. So, again, I'm not here to teach that shiur, but I wanted to bring to you the writings of Rav Kook that are found here. She doesn't know if he's going to come back or not. What if they don't find his body?
Okay, then she's aguna. That's what I'm about.
So this whole point was to avoid that problem. By the way, I have a book here called Hilchot Medina. It's one of the few books that were written by a competent Talmid Chacham on the laws of what a religious state of Israel would or could look like. Rabbi Eliezer Yehuda Waldenberg, the student of Harav Uziel, the Rosh Yeshiva. He was the owner. He was a famous Ashkenazi rabbi. The Rosh Yeshiva of Harav Uziel's yeshiva, the World Sephardic Yeshiva. The famous sentence when they asked Rav Uziel, but how do you put an Ashkenazi rabbi as the head of the Sephardic Yeshiva? He said, he's deserving of this job description. In here, Rav Waldenberg has a whole section on the gitin that should be written by today's Israeli army to solve the problem of aguna. And he has the first draft and the second draft, and some rabbis didn't like it, so he redrafted and redrafted and redrafted. To the best of my knowledge, I mean, I'm not an expert in this matter. To the best of my knowledge, it doesn't happen. And if Allah Aleinu, my mother mentioned the Yom Kippurim War. Chacham Ovadia Yosef, for almost 6 months, I didn't sleep, trying to solve all of these questions of agunot. They didn't find bodies, the dog tags, blown up tanks, all kinds of crazy stories. Who's going to do such work if we'd ever need that today? Allah Aleinu, we should never need it. You don't have another Chacham Ovadia. You have rabbis that they're too afraid to tell you what beracha to make on a raisin. They're going to tell you if a woman can get married without a divorce. The rabbis wouldn't know how to be a machshir, an air fryer. But they're going to tell you what happens if a body doesn't come back from war. It's a very scary thing. This option of a get al tanai is very important, to leave it with the bedin and to say, if I don't come back, and my wife should be divorced. Rav Kook says there's something much deeper going on here. And it's something very important, and it's relevant to our Rambam. So look with me. In Enaya, on page 56. Now I heard that they are making a commentary on the Enaya, which is a book that it needs much elucidation. I'm not a student of Rav Kook, so I'm not holding so much in the world and the writings of Rav Kook, and sometimes you get stuck on things. Even here, there's some ideas that obviously are interconnected with other writings of Rav Kook, and I'll try as much as I can to share with you. And you can take Rav Kook's words, you can not take them, but I think they're very deep and very powerful. So look here in the right column, Samech Aleph, he quotes this Gemara, and then he says the following. Ha'umot, the nations of the world, shematrat havayatan hi chomrit. that the purpose of their existence is not a spiritual existence. America, Canada, I don't know nations. It's actually very unclear to me how you define nations today. Okay? Let's talk about historically nations. The Mitzrim, the Chitim, the Emorim, all of them, they're physical nations. They don't necessarily have some spiritual calling that they were called for. והנן מצוירות כאין אגודת שותפים לצורכי קניינים אהובים או נדרשים להם. And they're united by common goals, needs, interests that unite them. אצלן תהיה אהבת האומה בכללה רק אז מבוססת. They love the nation because of what it does for the individual. כשתהיה תמיד חוזרת על הפרטים, I'll support the nation on condition that I'm getting something out of it. אל הטבת מצב המשפחה היחידה, שלשם הטבתה התאגדה האומה. I'm only part of this nation because it's been better for my family to be here. It's better for me to be here. I live in this society because it's good for me. So I'll be involved to the extent that it's good for me. Did I explain to you what he's talking about? I'm going to tell you something that you're not going to like. It doesn't matter if you like it or not. It's an observation. Okay, it's just an observation. I'm not telling you what's right and what's wrong. In the United States of America, people talked about COVID lockdowns. I'm not talking about the politics. I'm talking about reality. That's the reality. The reality is that there were no lockdowns in the United States. Very horrible and uncomfortable situations, sure. All kinds of rules and legislations, sure. But there were countries where people got locked in their houses, for real. Mamash, for real. It's a real thing. There are countries where they bought it. I'm not laughing because it's funny, I'm laughing because it's crazy. There are countries, English-speaking countries, I'm not trying to do some crazy. There are countries where people are being tracked and their devices, things that happen. In the United States of America, there were a lot of theoretical lockdowns. I'm not supposed to leave my house unless I'm an essential worker. I live on the freeway. There are a lot of essential workers that were essentially going to the beach and essentially going to wherever else they essentially went. I don't know. There are all kinds of things that were closed. The synagogues were closed. The clubs were open. That's interesting. I'm not telling you now. The laws made sense. That's not the point of what I'm telling you about. But the conversation you kept hearing in the United States is a conversation that is very American, which is, what about my personal freedoms and liberties? And this is a very important thing. Personal freedoms and liberties, a very American conversation. What about the other countries? They didn't know to talk about personal freedoms and liberties. In the essence of the nation that is America, there are many nations inside of the United States of America. They're united together because of common interest. This is an incredible place to live. This is an incredible country. But anyone who lived anywhere else in the world knows that this country is incredible. It's very often that people who are from here who have doubts as to whether or not this country is incredible. And I'm not here to tell you to be, you must be uber patriotic, but to be realistic and normal. There are countries in the world, people are running and skipping and jumping and tripping and maybe in some places just walking to get into this country. And they're not doing it because it's a horrible place to be. They're doing it because it's an incredible place to be. Even our Chachamim who came to this country, I'm talking about 200 years ago, could not believe that the theory that is America, this concept of freedom for people, they couldn't believe it was real. With all of its problems that were then, Chachamim came here and saw slavery and spoke against things that they saw. Didn't matter. This was still the greatest idea that anyone ever came up with. But if this country fails, it will be the failure of the greatest social experiment in history. This is an incredible concept. Am Yisrael, interestingly enough, does not operate as a nation of individuals. It bothers the American in you. That's why I gave this whole introduction, because of that. This country is similar, says Rav Kook, every country in the world is similar to what? כשם שחיות מדבריות, הבודדות בטבען, like desert creatures, animals in the desert, that are usually, they're solitary by their nature. מתקבצות לפעמים לרגלי צרה משותפת, או למחזה רווח של טרף משותף. There's a dead carcass, all of a sudden these vultures come together. They don't all live together in one happy family sharing one house, but when there's a dead body, they all come together. Or when they need something, there's some kind of struggle, they all go to highland together, whatever it might be. But they do it out of the interest that is for me being part of a pack. על כן, אימוץ השכרת המשפחה ואיגודה לפי מצבן הן, הוא ראוי להיות ממכשירי זריזות הקרב. When you mention a person's family, I'm going to war to fight for my family. I'm going to war to fight for our freedoms. I'm going to war to... That makes sense, because that's a motivator. Why do I go to war? I go to war to keep my family safe. That's normal. That's what normal people say. It says, על כן, היו הנשים באות במלחמה ומשותפות עם הבעלים. And that's what you find historically in the nations that Am Yisrael fought. There were even wives that came to war with their husbands. This is a family effort. We're saving our nation to go back home and to build our house and to have our families. לא כאלה חלק יעקב. He's paraphrasing Yirmiyahu, the prophet. But this is not the way the Jewish people operate. שתכלית מציאות האומה. Because the whole existence of this nation, מצד צורתה, מצד נשמתה, ואורח חייה, from the perspective of its soul and its purpose of life, בשביל קדושתה, because of its holiness, ורוח אדוני השפוך עליה, in the spirit of God, which is poured upon it, זהו האוצר היותר יקר מכל חמדה. The nation of Israel is the greatest thing that we have. זהו החפץ העליון של כל יחיד באומה ושל כל הכלל כולו. The only thing greater than me is my nation, Am Yisrael. That's greater than me as an individual member of Am Yisrael. זהו הנותן עוז ועטרה להוויית המשפחה עצמה בצביונה המקודש הישראלי. The family fits into the Jewish people as much as it's part of the greater nation of the Jewish people. על כן, therefore, בבוא התור לעבוד לטובת האומה בכללה. When it comes time for a person to put everything on the line for the nation as a soldier, אז כשרגה בטיהרה, like a candle in the sunlight. What does a candle help in the sunlight? It doesn't help. When you hold up a candle to the sun, you see better or worse? You see the candle anymore? It's gone. Yes? תבטל אהבת המשפחה, לבל תחלל את עוז אהבת האומה. When a soldier goes to war, he erases his family, like Rabbenu HaRambam says, because at this point in time, I'm not fighting for my family. I'm fighting for something greater than me. I'm fighting for something greater than my family. I'm fighting for Am Yisrael, the nation of HaKadosh Baruch Hu in this world. היציאה למלחמה לא הייתה, and by the way, for those of you who are afraid of nationalism, don't worry, Harav Kook is going to deal with you at the end. He's going to give you some good hope. Okay, but for right now, listen to the first half. היציאה למלחמה, the going out to war, לא הייתה על פי חשבון של הצלחת הפרט. It didn't come because of the success of the individual. שחשב שכשישוב מן המלחמה יהיה מוצלח ומאושר. When I go to war, I'm going to come back and have a good life. That's not how the Jewish soldier goes to war. לא. No. הוא צייר בעצמו כאילו התייאש מן החיים הפרטיים. He must imagine in his mind, what does Rabbenu HaRambam say? He erases his wife and his children. He must give up hope on his personal life entirely when he goes to war. והולך הוא בשמחה. And he goes with joy. על מנת למות מות גיבורים וקדושים במלחמת אדוני לרומם קרן לעמו. And he goes out with joy saying, even if I die, it doesn't matter. I'm dying with joy. It's not a martyrdom mentality. It's a mentality of my nation is so great. Because my God that rests his presence on my nation is so great that it doesn't matter if I die. What matters is that I go to war for this purpose. על כן, and therefore, כותב גט כריתות לאשתו. He writes a divorce document to his wife. For which purpose? לייאש את לבבו בכל האפשרי. מקשר משפחה ומהרעיון הפרטי התלוי בו. He divorces his wife because he doesn't have a wife when he goes to war. He goes to war with all of that erased. בהיותו דורך מהלך של רעיון יותר כללי ויותר עליון, he is now serving the purpose של העם כולו. He's not an individual. He's not a family man. He's not a husband. He's not a father. He is now an ambassador of Am Yisrael as a whole. So why does he write a divorce document to his wife? Yeah, for sure. There is no wife. Now he is alone. He's part of Am Yisrael, but with no worries. There's no concerns. There's nobody waiting at home because I have no home. Sounds cruel. It's terrible, eh? Listen to the next sentence. התוכחה אומנם נמרצה היא. But there's also a very deep moral lesson here. שבשעה שהכלל הוא מתרומם ומתקדש ביותר, because at that moment of war, when the whole nation overrides the individual freedoms and liberties and values, because the nation doesn't matter to people who care about individualism, because my rights and my freedoms come first. I don't care if everybody dies, I need to be able to go to Walmart. That's a value in a nation that values individualism. I'm not telling you that it's wrong, by the way. If that's the value system of the nation, then they're right. How can you put on me a system that I didn't come to this country to believe in? But in the nation of Israel, in Am Yisrael, there are moments where the nation overrides my individual rights, my freedoms, my liberties, my values, even my own family. There's something greater than me or my family. But, אין הדבר ראוי להשתמש בעילויים, לנגוע במצב אחד מהם הפרטי, שנעשה חופשי על ידי התרוממותם העליונה. There's value here, though. My wife can't suffer because I've now joined a cause that is greater than myself or my family. I have to free her also. She has to be free from me too. There's a tochecha here, says Rav Kook. The value is that, yes, I'm part of my nation, but the being part of my nation cannot come on account of my family. He's going to die, he's going to come home. If he comes home, she'll be happy. If he doesn't come home, she's not going to come home anyways. But at this point, the sadness should be now. Because she doesn't deserve to spend 20 years being an aguna afterwards. Just because I signed up for my nation doesn't mean she should sit at home for 20 years, never able to get remarried or have more children or continue her life. Nonetheless, this is from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. תהילים. שליקוחין יש לך בה. שסוף כל סוף גט כריתות כותב לאשתו. ועוד יש בזה הוראה המאמתת בפועל את הניתוק המעשי מחיי המשפחה הפרטית בשביל העניין הכללי הלאומי. At the end of the day, when a soldier goes to battle, he divorces himself entirely from his personal life. And he becomes an arm of the whole nation of Israel. שגם זה אף על פי שנסתבב במחוב. Because even though this comes about through pain, בכל מקום סופו הוא שיהיה לברכה, at the end it will become a blessing. להגביר חיל ולאמץ רוח, בעוז ימין אדוני רוממה, בגבורת ישע ימינו, הנטויה על עמו ונחלתו. But Rav Kook at the end of every piece throws out random pesukim. They're all of his books, and then many of his students try to explain why random pesukim were thrown here. These pesukim are not so random, but at the end of the day, the soldier goes to war, and even if he dies at war, he's not upset about it. Because he didn't go here as an individual hoping to come home. He went here in order to win. And if his nation wins, even though he never comes home, that was the whole point. This is the highest level of Avodat Hashem that can possibly exist. This is, they tell me, what I say? Adam ki yamut ba'ohel. When a person will die, the tent of the Torah, a person will die. Yes, maybe there's a midrash like that. But there are people that actually die for the Torah. There are people that actually die for Am Yisrael. And they go to war knowing they might never come home. You know, sometimes I read these letters that the soldiers write to their families before they go to war. If you're getting this letter, then it must be that I didn't come home. And you say to yourself, where do you make people like this? Where does it come from that you have people like that are real? They're alive. They're real people. It's not a movie that somebody made a Hollywood. They're real people, and hundreds and thousands of them. Where do they come from? These are people that are Avdei Hashem. They're the truest servants of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. By the way, it's for that reason why Chachmei Sfarad, there was a crazy guy once upon a time, Israeli soldiers. Israeli soldiers, they die in battle. They didn't keep Shabbat. They're going to go to hell anyways. What a stupid, small-minded person. Do you understand? Maybe he doesn't understand. The giving up of one's life on behalf of the nation of God is the greatest dedication to the purpose of God in the world. Now we hope not to die. The Torah says v'chai b'hem. We want to live in the Torah, but there are times we don't have a choice. All of those people that are right now fighting for the Jewish people, they're all genuine tzaddikim. It doesn't come out of some, fantastical thinking of mine. These are people that are carrying the burden of you and me, but not just of you and me, but of God, Kadosh Baruch Hu, the creator of the universe. Yichud Hashem. What is going to happen to the world if there are no Jewish people? What does it mean about the Torah? What does it mean about Kadosh Baruch Hu? What's going to happen to all those religions that rely on the fact that we exist to have a God? So everyone who goes to war to protect Am Yisrael is going to war for Yichud Shem Hashem, for the unification of God's name in the world. It's not the only place, by the way, that Rav Kook talks about this. Rav Kook mentions Rav Kook writes in Orot Yisrael, Lo ken b'Yisrael, mentions that all the individuals in the world are united by language, by cultures, but not the Jewish people. Haneshamash la'ichidim, the soul of the individuals, you don't have it here with you, I'm reading from a different book. Nishevet mimekol chei ha'olamim. It received its sustenance from the source of all life. Ba'otzar klal, this one soul, collective soul of the Jewish people. V'aklal noten neshama la'ichidim. And the whole gives souls to the individuals. By the way, Rav Kook in a letter says something very interesting. He says, "Mitzidam shli chidei hasegula, en anachnu yodim hevdel ben am v'lashon." When you talk about special people, really righteous people, there is no difference between every nation. Jewish people, other religions, other nations, the righteous ones of those nations are all from a special place of righteousness. Like it says in Bava Kama, Goy she'osek b'Torah, harei hu kekohen gadol. That a non-Jew who studies Torah, he's like the high priest in the Beit HaMikdash. Ukvar mu chachamenu, and our rabbis already say in Masechet Der Eretz, nekabel pnei filosof chavarenu, let us welcome the face of Filosof, our friend. And we know Filosof was an Oved Avodah Zarah, he was an idol worshiper. So why do you call him our friend? Because he was a righteous person. He was a real, genuine person. Of all the goyim in the world that are righteous, genuine people, they are like us and all that. אבל מה שאנחנו דורשים בשבחה של כנסת ישראל בכלל, that which we're talking about, the praise of the collective Jewish soul, הוא הדבר הסגולה האלוהית הנמצאת בנשמת האומה בכללה. We're talking now about the greatness of the Jewish people as they are combined into one nation. וממילא היא מתגלה גם כן בכל יחיד באיזו צורה מיוחדת. And therefore, in every individual Jewish person, you can find some of that goodness. It doesn't mean that innately every good every Jew is the best person you ever met in your life. But being that the neshamot of Am Yisrael united create a Knesset Yisrael, a collective soul of the Jewish people that is incredible, then if you dig inside of every one of Am Yisrael, you'll find a spark of that in them. Im ya'aleh al hadat, says Rav Kook, linatek me'oma, and if any person for one moment thinks to disconnect themselves from their nation, then ultimately he's making the choice to unplug himself from the source of all his life. וגדולה היא משום כך ההזדקקות שכל יחיד מישראל נזקק לכלל, והוא מוסר תמיד נפשו מבלי להיות נקרא מהאומה. And the Jewish person is found throughout history giving up his life for the Jewish people. But not all the greatest Jews in the world. Not every Jew who died in the Holocaust, died in the language, was a tzaddik of the universe. So why did he give up his life? Obviously. מפני שהנשמה ותיקונה העצמי דורש כן ממנו. Because the soul that is inside of him, that knows that he is part of something bigger, demands that from him, requires that from him. As we wrap up these laws of war, I hope to have at least one more shiur together on the laws of war, because many have asked for me to discuss the conversation surrounding yeshiva students and Torah scholars going to war or not. I've been debating with myself whether it should be obvious to you where I stand here, but whether it's the right time and place to stick my head there. But if I could just tell you before that, if you wish to understand a little bit of why a Jewish person cannot stop being a Jewish person, why somebody who converts to Judaism can never go back, because once a person is looped into Knesset Israel, there's no way to disconnect. He's no longer an individual, not part of himself, and there is no you anymore. Yeah, there is you, as much as it doesn't interfere with being part of the great nation of Am Yisrael. We are not individuals that are united together. We are one that manifests itself as many individuals. It's obviously a very deep part of Rav Kook's whole world view. I'm not here to tell you everyone will agree. But I think that as it relates to our soldiers, you could hug and kiss a soldier like a Sefer Torah, without exaggeration. There was a famous Ashkenazi rabbi in Yerushalayim. His name was Rabbi Shlomo Zalman Auerbach, alav shalom. People write this in the name of other people, but I saw it in his name for real. Amiti, not. People tell other stories that are obviously not real. When he would always see people, they go to the north to pray the graves of this tzaddik, and the south to pray the grave of that tzaddik, and the east and the west. They always say, I don't understand why you leave so far to go pray the graves of tzaddikim. And I'm not here to talk about whether or not you should pray the graves of tzaddikim. He said, I just go to Har Herzl, to Mount Herzl, where all the Israeli soldiers are buried. There's a whole mountain full of tzaddikim. And this war has caused in us a lot of unrest, a lot of conversation of what will be and what's going to happen with the Jewish people, what will be Am Yisrael, what's going to happen with this war, what about the soldiers. I think that we are the luckiest nation on earth, that these people are our brothers and sisters. We're the luckiest people in the world. And I only say what this Rambam said to the rest of us in its introduction, that I just wish that we deserve to be brothers and sisters of the people that are fighting for us right now. And out there in the world, and all the conversations of, are we right, are we terrorists, are we genocidal, are we crazy? Not only are we not genocidal, not only are we not evil, we're the greatest level of righteousness that exists in the world today. The greatest tzaddikim that exists in the world today are Israeli soldiers in green uniforms, and blue and white and other uniforms they have. The greatest tzaddikim on earth today. Not just subjectively to the Jewish people, but objectively to the whole world. Because if the whole world understood reality, if the whole world understood HaKadosh Baruch Hu and His Torah and the universe, they would recognize every single one of those people, even when they don't recognize it themselves, are part of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's arm that is representing Yichud Hashem in the world, that is fighting for the oneness of God in the world. And the reason a battle could be so hard, this part I'll say off camera. I'm just going to say thank you for learning Hilchot, laws of war with me in the Rambam.